Greetings, it is I, the great and all-powerful Weeb Strodamus, the one true geek prophet, coming to you to predict the future yet again, because I have foreseen it in the big anime titties and goblin booties, how the game industry will shape up, and it's not looking good. Now, full disclaimer, if I am wrong, it's not my fault. I was right, I just accidentally saw the wrong timeline. You know, it's really hard to tell timelines apart. They all kind of, look the same-ish, and sometimes you think you're in the good timeline where the Disney Star Wars is like some of the best stuff ever, and then you realize you're in that crappy Disney Star Wars timeline. I hate this timeline. It's so bad. So bad. Okay, joking aside, this ain't clickbait. Fundamentally, Sony and Xbox are doomed. PlayStation and Xbox are doomed. And I'm going to show you why. So this first bit of news comes from Grums, and the second bit of news will come from Grums, and I'm going to show you how things are shaping up legally, and then why this is going to go back into the game industry and doom the major console publishers. Well, doom everyone except for Nintendo, who is kind of dabbling in the woke, but only in Nintendo of America. So Nintendo is going to be fine. Maybe. Because they could shut down Nintendo of America or reform Nintendo of America and get away from a lot of the consequences. Sony, I gotta start saying PlayStation. PlayStation and Xbox are going to be vastly less fine as their entire division, their entire companies, are engaging in this DEI nonsense, which is flat-out racism. Okay, so here, Grumps reports that Firewalk Studios and Sony are just ignoring the criticism, considering it white noise, dismissing it. At the time that their trailer has 44k dislikes, their lead character designer is being an outright racist, and is responsible for turning them woke. Now we hop over here. Avalanche Studios just closed 2 studios, and they began doing DEI after Xbox mandated it as part of their investment into contraband, because after that happened, a new director of diversity was hired. The studio suddenly started talking about ESG, DEI, published their first ESG report, and that was when Sweet Baby Inc., so, contraband's dead on arrival. I mean, it's going to be good Game Pass fodder, if anything at all, was hired on board as consultants. The ideal is that their investment came with strings, and that is why they suddenly went and woke and are engaging in woke now. How is this indicative of them going bad? Okay, so you see here that both Xbox and PlayStation are doubling, tripling down on this nonsense. They're doubling, tripling down on racial discrimination. Well, that's not going to fly for long. America First Legal has been fighting the major hedge funds and economic powers who have been pushing DEI. They got affirmative action struck down by the Supreme Court. They're now trying to get DEI initiatives struck down as well. And one of the biggest lawsuits currently going on for America First is against Disney Corporation. Disney is arguing that they have the right to discriminate against people based on race because it's the right of association. Now, I'm no legal expert, but I'm pretty sure they tried that argument back in the 60s and that argument was struck down, so good luck with that, Disney. Good luck with that. This case here is going to determine how screwed Sony and Xbox are. The Supreme Court changed the standard for discrimination lawsuits recently. You don't have to prove you have significant damage. You just have to prove that you have been discriminated against, and then you can proceed with your lawsuit. This is a huge fundamental change in the game, because beforehand, even though you are obviously being discriminated against by being passed up because you're not black or LGBT, you didn't have any major damages. But now, the sheer fact that you're being passed up from these promotions, passed up for raises, will allow you to sue. And how these cases go down right now are going to determine how screwed Xbox and PlayStation is. Because if America First Legal wins this case, that means Xbox cannot defend against any of their discrimination, which word is extremely systemic. They'll be buried under a mountain of lawsuits, and Sony's going to be coming up really quickly behind that. Because imagine, you lay off a whole studio, and then all of a sudden you have 60 white people suing you for being racially discriminatory against them, for making racially discriminatory actions, for their DEI efforts. And any amount of profit that PlayStation or Xbox has made or will make is going to be gone. Because they're not going to win these class action lawsuits. It's going to be class action after class action after class action. More likely a ton of individual lawsuits. And then when they're all done, it'll probably take about 5 to maybe 10 years to circle through the courts. But when it's done, these divisions, which were already being hit hard by the recession, are not going to survive. And it gets even worse. So PlayStation, they're doubling down. They're going to reach a point where it's going to be obvious DEI, ESG is done. Maybe after this upcoming election, depending on how that goes, maybe it'll be when we hit the full-on depression that's coming. It's going to happen. Xbox is going to have this revelation. So they're going to be like, oh, no, we need to get rid of all this wokeness, but you can't. You have projects because of your staffing that are 5 years out. So for 5 years, you have nothing but flop after flop after flop after flop after flop in the works. On top of that, you can't get good talent. Your studios are bereft of good talent because you DEI'd. So you're staffed with a bunch of people who can't do the job. So you're looking at maybe 6 years to fix your entire studios? And you think Sony, who is over $30 billion in debt, and Microsoft are just going to sit around and be like, oh yeah, no, we don't care that you're not making money, that you're an embarrassment, that you're getting us sued the crap out of. They're not. Sony and Xbox are setting themselves, again, PlayStation and Xbox are setting themselves up for failure. Because it's going to take too long to cycle through the bad games. And during that time, you're going to see studio shutdown after studio shutdown after studio shutdown. And there's nothing that is going to stop this. Even if America First loses this case, the depression and the growing anti-woke sentiment in the general audiences are going to crush Xbox and Sony. And eventually, Larry Fink, Vanguard, State Street, and all the other woke capital, they're not going to be able to keep doing this. Because if you're wondering why they're going hyper woke now, is half of the ESG funds were shut down last year. In 2023, half of the ESG funds that existed were shut down, and they're increasingly becoming shut down. These companies are zombies. What that means is that they need debt in order to survive. And when you have a bunch of people who can't do the job, when you're bloated, when you're not turning a good profit margin, you have to get the ESG and DEI loans. You have no choice. Well, I mean, you do have a choice. You could actually restructure and pivot to profit. But they're not going to choose that because the money for ESG and DEI is too good. And as I was listening to... And then it's going to be a big issue about how the country's going to be structured after this upcoming election. I'm not going to get into politics here about that, but if Trump wins, there's going to be a significant shift away from ESG and DEI in this country. And even if he doesn't win, the economic ramifications that are coming down the pipeline as we grow ever increasingly closer to a Great Depression are going to be unmistakable. Whoever wins is going to have to force these changes, and these companies are not going to be ready to adapt. And that is why they are doomed. That is all there really is to say about this. Thank you all for tuning in. Hit that like, subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.